This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Ruchim Abam, welcome everyone. Just a few brief thoughts about Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av is tomorrow, the 15th day of Av, which the Gemara tells us Soif Tainus was the day that was designated for Shidduchim, where the Bachurei Yisrael would go out and search and select their zivug. The Gemara says that the Besulos would go dance Bikramim, and the Besulos would say, Bachur Sa'inecha, look, check out the merchandise, right? See what you're selecting. Okay. And then the Gemara concludes at the end of Masechta Tainus and Daf Lamed Aleph, that the Gemara says, Asar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lasois Machoil et Tzadikim. In the future, God's going to make a big circle, a big dance for the tzaddikim. And each one is going to point to Hashem in the middle, and each one is going to say, Zeh Hashem kivinu lai. This is the God that we hope for. What's the meaning, what's the deeper significance of this concept that in the future God is going to make a circle for the tzaddikim? What's so special about a circle? Why a circle? Why not a rectangle? Why not a triangle? What's the inyan of the circle? And perhaps then we can understand the secret behind the phrase Loihayu Yamim Tovim L'Yisrael Kechamisha Asar Be'av. What's the meaning of Chamisha Asar Be'av? So the Sefer Bnei Yissaschar, Rav Melech Midinov, brings down an idea that what's special about a circle, and this he quotes from Rabbi Yeshua Heschel, from Mezhbez. He says what's special about a circle is that there is no position of prominence. Wherever you are on the circle, you are equidistant to the center, and you're just as close as anybody else. Nobody is closer, nobody has more distinction, nobody has more honor. Kulam shavim. Everyone is 100% equal. La'asid lavai, Klal Yisrael will be on the level. Everyone is equal. There's no kina, there's no jealousy, there's no sacharos, there's no strife. Everybody's equal, nobody's more important than anybody else, and there'll be a certain degree of shalom. That's the concept of the circle.
But the Goyim also have this concept.
Ours is true, right? And so he says the meaning of Chamisha Asar Be'av. Be'av could also mean Be'alef Beis, of the Aleph Beis. Chamisha Asar Be'av, the 15th letter of the Aleph Beis. What's the 15th letter of the Aleph Beis? Well, Yud is 10, Chaf is 11, Lamed is 12, Mem is 13, Nun is 14, Samach is 15. 15, Samach is the circle. Loihayu Yamim Tovim L'Yisrael. There will be no greater day than Chamisha Asar, than the 15th letter, Be'av, of the Aleph Beis. What day is that? What day is the Samach? The day of the Samach is La'asad Lavai, when God will make the big circle for the Tzaddikim. Okay, so that's one meaning of Chamisha Asar Be'av. It's sort of a glimpse of La'asad Lavai, of when everyone will be equal, everyone will be Shaveh. Okay, one more thought before we conclude, and that is, why was the 15th day of Av selected to be a day of Shidduchim? Why wouldn't we pick a day that's already a Yom Tov? Why invent a new Yom Tov? What, there are not enough Yom Tovim? Make it on Purim, make it on Sukkot, make it on Chanukah, make it on Pesach. Why invent a new Yom Tov? So maybe you'll say, the Gemara already says that traditionally, that day we already saw historically was the day of Shidduchim. Why? We know that was the day Shevet Binyamin was allowed back to marry into the rest of the Jewish people. And that was the day that all the Shvatim were allowed to marry into the Jewish people. Originally, in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, if you came from Shevet Asher, you could only marry someone from Shevet Asher. If you came from Shevet Naphtali, you could only marry someone from Shevet Naphtali. And on the 15th day of Av, they lifted that restriction, and they allowed all Jews to marry each other. Question, so then maybe you'll say, the reason why this became a day of Shidduchim is because traditionally, this was a day that more Shidduchim were allowed. So maybe that's why they selected that day.
Wasn't Yom Kippur also a day?
Yeah, Yom Kippur also. So Yom Kippur, we know, Yom Kippur is already a well-known calendar date in the Jewish year. But what's the significance of the 15th day of Av? So you say, well, maybe because historically that was the day of Shidduchim, because that was the day Shevet Binyamin was permitted, that was the day the other Shvatim were permitted. Well, why was that the day, Min HaShamayim, why did that become the day that Shevet Binyamin was permitted? Why did that become the day that all the Shvatim became permitted? So the Bnei Yissaschar advances a very interesting idea. And that is, we know, 40 days before a person is created. The Gemara says, Masechta Soita, right? What that? Daf Bezim and Aleph, right? Avam Yom Kanim Mitzvah Savlad, Bas Kol Machrezes Vaimeres, Bas Pliny LePliny. So and so to so. In other words, there's an idea that a person's zivug is predetermined, is pre-arranged, 40 days before a person is created even. 40 days before conception, the Yitzira of the Vlad, Hashem already calls out min hashamayim, so and so to so and so. So we see the idea is that 40 days before something, the future is already begins to be arranged. Okay. What day did God create the world? So we know man was created on Rosh Hashanah. But that means the first day out, man was created on the 6th day of creation. What was the first day of creation?
25th of Elul.
Chaf Hei Elul. 25th day of Elul is the first day of creation. Now, that means that was the first day that God was already planning to have this special connection with the Jewish people. Why did God create the world? Bereshis bara Elokim. Bereshis means bishvil reshis, because of the Jewish people. God created the world because of the Jewish people. So God was thinking about the Jewish people on the 25th day of Elul, the first day of creation. But if that's the first day of creation, then when was God conceiving the concept? 40 days before the 25th day of Elul. When is 40 days before the 25th day of Elul? Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av was God preparing the Shidduch. The 25th day of Elul is when God is actualizing it. He's creating the world. But when was God preparing it? Just like we know, when a person is created, God prepares the Zivug 40 days earlier. God created the world on the 25th day of Elul. When did He begin to conceptualize that plan? 40 days earlier on the 15th day of Av. That's another secret of the 15th day of Av. And therefore, we could say that according to the opinion that the world was created on the first day of Nisan, which means the first day of creation is the 25th day of Adar, there's something special about 40 days before the 25th day of Adar. What's 40 days before the 25th day of Adar?
Tu B'Shvat.
Tu B'Shvat. So we see,
It's a machloket.
right? What?
It's a machloket.
Between Bisham and Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says Tu B'Shvat. Right? So we see that the 40th day before either the 25th day of Adar or the 25th day of Elul is a special day, either Tu B'Av or Tu B'Shvat. Okay, one last step. What is the first day of creation? Well, when was man created? It's actually machlokes Tanoim between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Lezer says, B'Tishrei nivra ha'olam, the world was created in Tishrei. And Rabbi Yeshua says, B'Nisan nivra ha'olam, the world was created in Nisan. Who do we paskin like? We paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. The Mishnah says in Rosh Hashanah, when do we start counting the years? Tishrei, right? Now we're in Tafshin Ayin Dalid. When are we going to be in Tafshin Ayin Hey? Rosh Hashanah. That means we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer, not Rabbi Yeshua. Right? On Rosh Hashanah davening, we say, Zeh hayom tchilas ma'asecha. Today is the first day of creation. What do you mean? Only Rabbi Eliezer holds that. Rabbi Yeshua says it's Nisan. We're paskining like Rabbi Eliezer. And the question is, why would we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer? There's a klal. There's a rule. Machlokes Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, halacha Rabbi Yeshua. It's a rule in Shas that we always paskin like Rabbi Yeshua over Rabbi Eliezer. So why, when it comes to the creation of the world, do we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer? Plus, the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos and Daf Kuf Lamed Amud Beis, Rabbi Lezer Shmusihu. Rabbi Lezer is a Talmud of Beis Shammai, or he's put in Cherem, one or two pshatim. Either way, we never paskin like Rabbi Lezer. Why here are we paskin like Rabbi Lezer? So says Bnei Yissaschar, a very interesting idea. You know why we're paskin like Rabbi Lezer? Because min hashamayim they paskin like Rabbi Lezer. How do we know that? Because if we see that the 15th day of Av, Min HaShamayim always becomes the day that Shidduchim take place, Binyamin became Mutter L'Kahal, all the Shvatim became Mutter L'Kahal. Why is God arranging that all these Shidduchim take place on Tesvav Av? It must be because Hashem is showing us that the world was created in Tishrei. The first day of creation is the 25th day of Elul. And therefore, 40 days before is Tu B'Av. So if we see all the zivugim happen on Tu B'Av, that's God's way of sort of endorsing the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. And therefore, that's another reason why, perhaps, even though Loi Bashamayim, this is not a halachic reason, but this is maybe some heavenly indication that, in fact, the world was created on Tishrei.
Some Rishonim said that Elu ve'elu dvarim, so how parallel?
So the Arizal says in the Pri Etz Chaim that both are true, that Rabbi Lezer is b'maaseh and Rabbi Shiur is b'machshava, right? But nevertheless, this is one dimension of understanding such a thing, that the halacha is like Rabbi Lezer, because we see min hashamayim, God is orchestrating, He's showing the significance of Tu B'Av, which indicates to us that indeed the world was, the first day of creation was the 25th day of Elul. Rabbi, have a wonderful day. Shkaya.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.